In Inquiry 10.3, we're going to be introducing two characters that we're going to create called Clyde and Claire. And so our question for this lab is, what traits will Clyde and Claire pass on to their offspring? So for your hypothesis, think about Clyde and Claire's children will have the following traits because. So let's take a look at some of the traits we're going to be looking at. Okay. The traits you have to pick from are, will their head be round or a block head shape? Will they have a widow's peak or straight hairline? Will they have a wide nose or narrow nose? Will they have hanging earlobes or attached earlobes? Will they have no freckles or freckles? Will they have unconnected eyebrows or will they have connected eyebrows, which would be a unibrow? Will they have dark hair like black or brown, or will they have light hair like blonde? Will they have dark colored eyes like black or brown? Will they have light colored eyes like green or blue? And then lastly, will they be male or female? So on your hypothesis, you would need to state right here which of those traits you think the children would have and why. Or in general, do you think the children would have the dominant traits or recessive traits and why? If you want to simplify it that way. Okay, the materials for this lab are found on page 161 and the procedures are found in your book on page 169 to 170. Okay, so for our data, we're going to find out our traits for Clyde and Claire, and then after we find out our traits for Clyde and Claire, we will do Punnett squares to find out what traits their children have. Now be prepared, we have about 3 class days set aside for this lab because it takes a while to gather our data and then do our Punnett squares to find out what their offspring have. And then lastly, we'll be drawing pictures of what Clyde, Claire, and their child will look like. So if you end up having homozygous dominant traits for the offspring or for the parents, then remember, homozygous dominant is when you have 2 copies of the dominant trait. So it'd be like having 2 of the capital letters. Homozygous recessive would be where you have 2 copies of the lowercase trait or the recessive trait. So it'd be like little r, little r. Heterozygous would be if you have a combination of 1 dominant trait and 1 recessive trait, like big R, little r. So those are some examples for you to think about. Now again, at home, if you do not have, of course you do not have this spinner. So again, you can flip coins. You need 2 coins. It doesn't matter if it's 2 pennies or 2 quarters or what, just make sure you get 2 coins, okay? If you land 2 tails, then we would use that as homozygous recessive. If you land a head and a tail, then we'll do that as heterozygous. And if you land 2 heads, then we will use homozygous dominant. So 2 heads is homozygous dominant, 2 tails is homozygous recessive, and then 1 head and 1 tail would be heterozygous. But if you're at school, you'll be using the spinner to do these. Okay, so let's go down to our data table. Okay, you first will go down the list and find out Clyde's traits. And let me show you an example of that. Let's say that I have my 2 coins and I flip my coins to see what traits Clyde has. If my 2 coins land on heads, then Clyde would have big R, big R. So right here in this box, I would write big R, and I would use the text box tool to type big R right here, and I'll just go ahead and do that for you. If I landed on 1 head and 1 tail, then I would do big R, little r. If I landed on 2 tails, then I would do little r, little r. So if he has big R, then phenotype is going to be round. Okay, he'll have a round head. If I landed on big R, little r, he still would have a round head. But if I landed on little r, then his phenotype would be blockhead. Okay, now I would continue doing that for each of these traits. For widow's peak, you're just using different letters. You're using big W, little w. So let's say that I got 2 heads, so I'd have big W, and of course that would be widow's peak. And I'm just going to put widows there. Okay, if I landed on big W, little w, because I had 1 head and 1 tail, then it would also be widow's peak. But if I landed on little w, then it wouldn't be widow's peak. It would actually be a straight hairline. So I would put straight in the phenotype box. Okay, and I think I spelled straight wrong, sorry. Okay, so you would do all of Clyde's traits that way, and when you get done with Clyde, then you would do the same process for Claire. Now, when you get through with Claire, you do not do the same process for the offspring. We won't be flipping coins for the offspring. Instead, we will be doing Punnett squares. So you would come down to this section, and let's say that for Clyde, I had gotten little r, so for head shape, so I would put little r here. And let's say for Claire, just for example's sake, let's say I got big R, so I would put one of those big R's here, and one of those big R's here. Then to find out what their child had, I would do the Punnett squares. If you remember from our Punnett square practice, that whatever is here comes down into this box, whatever's here comes over into this box. So in this box, I would have big R, little r. I'm sorry, I did that backwards. Big R from the mother, little r from the father. Okay, in this box, I would bring this one down and this one over. So I'm going to have big R, little r. Okay, in this box, I'm bringing this one down and this one over. So again, I have big R, little r. And then in this box, I bring this one down and this one over. So again, I have big R, little r. So in this example, there is 100% chance that the child will be big R, little r. The probability of expressing the recessive trait, would be a 0% chance, because all 4 of the chances for the offspring would be dominant because they have the big R. I'm sorry, I messed up there. Okay, now determined by the spinner. I would flip my coins to get a 1, 2, 3, or 4. Or if you're at school, you'll use the spinner to get a 1, 2, 3, or 4. In this case, it doesn't matter which one I get, because in any case here, all of these chances, the probability for the genotype is going to be big R, little r. So, of course, the phenotype is what the child will look like. So this child is going to have a round head. Okay, so you would take this result and go back up here to the offspring box. You would put the offspring's genotype is big R, little r. And for phenotype, of course, it would be round. So you would do that same process for all of Clyde and Claire's traits on these Punnett squares that are down here on this sheet. There is 1 Punnett square for each one of the categories of traits. Okay, when you finish gathering all of the results, then here are some pictures that show examples of what the traits look like. And so in this space here, you would use your drawing tool and you would draw what Clyde looks like, what Claire looks like, and what their child looks like. And by then you will know if your child is a male or female, and so you can give the child a name if you would like to. Okay, then you have a couple of vocabulary words to look up in the glossary, and then you have a space to write your conclusion. So remember, this lab is long, so you can break it up into parts and do a little bit each day. We have about 3 different days set aside for you to do this lab. You start it on November 9th, but it is not due until November the 12th. So you have 3 days to complete this lab. So you can do a little bit at a time.